Welcome to this limit series. This is going to be the most comprehensive series on limits that is there on the internet. And if you watch this series, you won't need any other video to watch after this to get a comprehensive knowledge or concepts and application based on limits. In the first part of this, we'd already discussed about the basic concept and three very important techniques: graphical technique, LHL RHL based technique, and direct substitution. And then we took some very simple questions and I illustrated how to write a question even in school exams. In this one, we are going to graduate to a more difficult level. I am going to take type 2, that are questions based on LHL RHL, and how can we use these two ideas to handle questions based on modulus and graph and greatest interior function. That in my experience is most of the problem for most of the students. We'll start with simple questions, we'll go on to JEE Mains question, and you will learn a systematic method to handle all of those questions. So without any further delay, let us jump into it. So let us start with type 2 questions using LHL RHL to remove indeterminacy. So let us take a very simple question based on modulus. In this question, we want to find the limiting value of the function and when x tends to 4. So we'll have to find LHL. So whenever you see piecewise defined function like modulus, GIF, don't directly start. Please have a look over it, and if required, apply LHL RHL. So as a default step, we should apply LHL RHL. So once you have done this, limit h tends to 0, f of 4 minus h will come. If I substitute the value here, this becomes limit h tends to 0. 4 minus h minus 4 modulus of this divided by 4 minus h minus 4. This cancels out and this becomes limit h tends to 0. H by minus h. This cancels out and answer becomes minus 1. Wherein if I find RHL, let us see what do we get. Limit h tends to 0. F of 4 plus h. As a result, it becomes limit h tends to 0. 4 plus h minus 4. 4 plus h minus 4. These two terms will cancel out. As a result, this becomes limit h tends to 0. Mod of h by h, which can in turn be written as h by h. This cancels out and the answer comes out with. You can see that LHL is not equal to RHL. Hence, limit does not exist. So this is a primary method. Now we will just scale it up. Again, you can pause the video, try solving this question. I will solve it quite fast. Again, I will find LHL. Limit h tends to 0. F of 0 minus h. This becomes limit h tends to 0. 0 minus h or minus h, and here minus h ka mod divided by 0 minus h. So limit h tends to 0 minus h by minus h. You can see that it is limit h tends to 0. Minus will get cancelled out, 2h by h. Answer comes out to be 2. Wherein if I find RHL, let us see what do we get. It would be limit h tends to 0. F of 0 plus h. So if I now find the value of function at 0 plus h, it will be h minus mod of h by h. As a result, this becomes h minus h by h, or you can clearly see that limit h tends to 0 by h. Now here, very conceptual thing you should understand. One is your numerator is exactly 0. So this part is exactly 0. Exactly 0. Wherein the denominator that you are writing is h. This is a small quantity. Any small quantity. So if you are writing 0 by 0.00001 also, then still the answer is 0. So what will happen? The answer to this question. You can again see that LHL is not equal to RHL. So limit does not exist. Now this third question is a very interesting question. This question says that function is given, gx is given, find the limit of composite function. This is very unique. This we haven't done till so far. So let us see how to handle this question. So again, we'll use our LHL RHL method only. So limit h tends to 0. F of g, in place of x, we'll write 1 minus h, because we need to check in the vicinity of 1 here. So now if I take this function, let us see what happens. So for the first part, g of 1 minus h, I am looking into values of g smaller than 1. So this part of the function I will have to utilize. So this will become 3 minus 1 minus h. And as a result, what we have got is limit h tends to 0. F of 2 plus h. Now once you are into the function fx, 2 plus h will go in this part. And as a result, this becomes limit h tends to 0. 2 plus h whole square plus 2. If I put h tends to 0, direct substitution would mean this becomes 4 plus 2. Answer comes out to be 6. Now once you have accomplished that, now let us go into the RHL side. Limit h tends to 0. F of g of 1 plus h I will figure out. Now once we are looking into this, now when I write the value of g, I will have to consider the other part. So now what I am doing is, instead of this part, I will have to consider this part. So this will become 2 times 1 plus h. And as a result, this becomes limit h tends to 0, f of 2 plus 2h. You can see that inside the function fx, still we are considering values greater than 2. So the first part will still come. So becomes limit h tends to 0, 2 plus 2h whole square plus 2. If I do direct substitution, again becomes 4 plus 2. Answer becomes 6. So you can see that LHL is equal to RHL. So the value of the limit x tends to 1, f of gx, comes out to be equal to 6. So it's a beautiful example and question based on composite function, and similar question came in JEE also. Now let us take some previous year questions and to take forward the ideas that we have learned. If I look into this next question that was based in JEE. In JEE Mains question, what you can see here, this kind of limit is given. See, most of the time students will only read this question because they feel that this is the question, but actually these options are also part of question. So if you read the question along with the options, you will realize that most of the options only differ at what happens is minus 6.5, minus 7.5. What does that ultimately means? That if I just check it 2 points, a is equal to minus 7.5 and then a is equal to minus 6.5, I will be able to differentiate between the options and get my right answer. So this is the simplest way of thinking about this question. So first I will check LHL RHL here, then I will check LHL RHL here. Now if I check at the first point, I will have to first figure out the value of LHL. That becomes limit h tends to 0, f of, and I am only worried about this part of the function, f of minus 7.5 minus h. Now in order to first do or apply this, and it would be sane on my part to simplify the function inside using properties of GIF. So this will become minus 5 and then this will become 2 times greatest integer function of 2x minus 2. So it comes out to be greatest integer function of x minus greatest integer function of 2x minus 7. If I put it here, this becomes limit h tends to 0, minus 7.5 minus h, and then plus minus, so 2 times minus 7.5 minus h. So this comes out to be minus 8 because I am dealing with a value between minus 8 and minus 7, and this next part you can see that will become minus 15 minus 2h. So minus 15 minus 2h will become minus 16 minus 7. So what I am saying is, let me qualify what I am saying. So if I multiply it by 2, this becomes minus 15 minus 2h. So what I am saying is this value lies between minus 15, minus 16 and minus 15. So the value of this would become minus 16. This is what I have done. Okay. So I'm not written it very explicitly because we have been doing this for quite long. You should understand this much. If I do this much, you can see that this becomes 16 minus 15. Answer becomes 1. You can see that even LHL is not coming out to be 0. There is no point checking RHL. So this point will not be there. So based on this, either this could be my answer or this could be my answer. And I can't easily figure out, but B and D, one of them should be the answer. Now let us do the same thing for the next part. Again, let us figure out LHL here. So it will become again limit h tends to 0, f of minus 6.5 minus h. See, it would be better if you figure out RHL first, because on the other boundary it would be more of a RHL problem than LHL problem. But even you figure out this, it won't go wrong. But I will do RHL because the chances of RHL going wrong are more, and it is always better to do less in such kind of questions. So I will check RHL first. If I do this, what is going to happen? This becomes limit h tends to 0. Question was greatest interior function of x. This will become minus 6.5 plus h. Then minus 2 times 6.5 plus h, greatest interior function. And then you have minus 7. If I simplify this, this becomes, and now if I look into the first part, the value is slightly greater than minus 6.5. So this will again be between minus 7 and minus 6. So can be written as minus 7. The next part would have a minus sign. Now this value is minus 6.5. You can see that if I even multiply by 2, this will become 6.5 square 2 is 13. So minus 13 plus h. So let me write it down for you. So what we are writing is minus 13 plus 2h. This value would be minus 12 point something. The value is between minus 12, minus 13, 13 plus 2h, and between minus 12. So the answer will become minus 13. If I consider this, let us see what happens. You can see that this becomes 13 minus 14. Answer comes out like this one. Okay. So this basic calculation we have been doing for quite some time. I have removed this. You can again see that since it is also not equal to 0, no need to check the other part. So if you intelligently take LHL here, RHL here, the calculation will become less. You out of these two options, even minus 6.5 can't be included. So this becomes my answer. Now this JEE Mains 2020 question is a very good application. They are talking about two very important things. One is the value of lambda, and corresponding to that they want us to find the value of L. Now we can see that when they have already told that it is equal to L, this indirectly means that limit exists. And this would mean that if I find LHL and RHL, ultimately they should be equal. This is what it means. Okay. So now keeping this in the background, now let us try and approach this question. So if I find the value of LHL, let us see what do we get. Limit h tends to 0, f of 0 minus h. If I figure that out, this becomes limit h tends to 0. Mod of 1 minus h will become plus h, plus minus h ka mod, and then divide by lambda plus h plus minus h ka greatest interior function. So if you put all of these values, limit h tends to 0 will come out to be, this will become 1 plus 2h. And here if I look into the values, this would become h, this is lambda, and this will become minus 1. Now it becomes a determinate limit. I can put h as 0. If I put h as 0, becomes 1 by lambda minus 1, and there will be a mod over it. Similarly, if I figure out the value of RHL, let us see what do I get. So this becomes limit s. So this is my first step. This is my next step. H tends to 0, f of 0 plus h. So this becomes limit h tends to 0, mod of 1 plus, this will become now minus, and then you have mod of h, divide by lambda minus h plus greatest interior function of h. If I try and figure out value for this, you can clearly see that this becomes limit h tends to 0, 1 minus h plus h. This will become lambda minus h. Value of this part becomes 0. There is a mod over it. Put the limit. If you put the limit, you can see that numerator will become 1, denominator will become lambda mod of that. In the third part of this discussion, what they are saying is limit do exist and is equal to L. So now let us do this. So 1 by lambda mod that is my RHL should be equal to LHL, that is lambda minus 1 mod. If simplified, this will become lambda minus 1 mod is equal to lambda mod. If I want to solve this, I can square it up. This is the standard technique to solve mod on both the sides and then bring them on the same side. So lambda minus 1 whole square minus lambda square will be equal to 0. If simplified, a square minus b square, a minus b, and a plus b will come. So what I have done is I have applied this formula. A square minus b square is equal to a minus b into a plus b. If I apply this, you can see that the value of lambda comes out to be 1. So in the fourth step, what they are asking us, what is the value of L? Now L is 1 by mod of lambda. If I put this value, this will become 2. So the value of L comes out to be equal to 2. That is option A. Again in next question, we will go ahead and figure out the value of LHL, RHL, and they are saying that the limit exists. So we will be able to equate them and then ultimately get the value of A. So if you have this limit h tends to 0, this will become f of 7 minus h. Let us substitute this value and see what do we get. So limit s tends to 0. This will become 18 minus greatest integer function of 7 minus h. 1 minus 7 plus h will come. Divide by greatest integer function of 7 minus h minus 3. If I simplify this, this comes out to be limit h tends to 0. This becomes 18. This will come out to be minus 6 plus h. And then denominator comes out to be 7 minus 3a minus h. Now if I specifically talk about the next step, we need to figure out what will happen to minus 6 plus h. So let us draw a number line to understand. So you are at minus 6. If I add plus h to it, you will be slightly on the right hand side. So the integer is smaller than that would be equal to minus 6. If I interpret this, what happens to the numerator? It becomes 18 minus minus 6 because the value lies between minus 6 and 5. Divide by, you can see that this is 7 minus 3. Now if you look into the options, the a that is given is integer. So again, what is happening is you are standing at 7 minus 3a. If I am looking for a value that is smaller than that, so it will become an integer that is 1 less than this. So the value corresponding to this becomes 24 by 7 minus 3a minus 1. Why I am writing this, you will understand in a minute. Once you have done this, in the next part, let us do it for RHL. This becomes limit h tends to 0, f of 7 plus h. So this becomes limit h tends to 0, 18 minus 1 minus 7 minus h, divide by 7 plus h minus 3a. Now again, if I interpret this part, you can see that the numerator limit h tends to 0, this will become 18 minus 6 minus h. But in the denominator, what we have is 7 minus 3a plus h. So what will happen? See, now again in the second part, what are you looking into? You are looking for values. If I look into the first part, minus 6 smaller values, so between minus 6 and minus 7. Now you are here. So the value of this part will become minus 7. So this will become 18 plus 7. Wherein for the next part, if you look into the denominator, if this is 7 minus 3a and if I am looking into values, so this is 7 minus 3a plus 1 here. So GIF will become 7 minus 3. This is what we have got. In the next part, what they are saying is the limit do exist. So that would mean LHL should be equal to RHL. So let us move to the third part. So we are saying LHL should be equal to RHL. So and from here we'll be able to get the value of A. So the numerator for the LHL becomes 24. I am assuming for solving this question the value of 7 minus 3A as t. So this will become t minus 1. And this part becomes nothing but 25 by t. We can cross multiply this, solve and get my answer. So if I solve this, 24 times t will be 25 times t minus 25. So the value of t, if you simplify, comes out to be 25. This is 7 minus 3a. So from here, if I solve, the value of minus 3a will be equal to 18, or a comes out to be minus 8. Once you have got this value, you can see that A option matches. So again, we are using the same idea, but in a more complex context. If I talk about this next question talks about this value of this function. Now what they're talking about is basically at x equal to 0 is equal to this, and they are talking about the left hand limit of this function. So I do not need to find the right hand limit, that is of critical value here. So now I can easily go and figure out the LHL. So if I want to figure out the LHL, becomes limit h tends to 0, f of 0 minus h. And if I substitute this value inside the function that is given to me, it becomes 1 minus h, greatest integer function, alpha raised to the power 2 raised to the power greatest integer function of minus h, plus fractional part of minus h, plus greatest integer function of minus h minus 1, divide by 2 times minus h greatest integer function of that, plus fractional part of minus h. Now here we should understand the basics of greatest integer function. See, I have seen most of the students having weak basic in this area. So what we are talking about is what will happen to fundamentally two things: greatest integer function of minus h, this will become minus 1, and then what happens to greatest integer function, fractional part of minus h. See, whenever you are trying to figure out something in fractional part of x, the definition is very simple. This can be imagined like this. This becomes an easy way of interpretation. So I can write this as minus h minus greatest integer function of minus h. So this will become minus h. This will become minus 1. So becomes 1 minus h. This is important. Directly also you can write, but even if you don't know it, you can use this hack to get the answer. So once you have got this, what happens to this whole expression? So what I am saying is 1 minus h will become 0. Here the power of alpha, what we have got is minus, and now if you figure out this value, you can see that this value here and here is written same. If I just figure out the value here, I will be able to understand. So this will become minus 2 plus 1 minus h. So this becomes minus 1 minus h. So this can be written as minus 1 minus h. And denominator also I can write as nothing but minus 1 minus h. And for the other things, that this will become also minus 1. And this part is already minus 1. So you can see that after doing this in the next part, what I need to do is take this value, that is alpha raised to the power. If I put the limit, because there is a limit over it as well, limit h tends to 0. If I put the limit along with this, now what will happen to this part? You can see that this will become alpha raised to the power minus 1 minus 2 by minus 1. So if I write, this becomes alpha raised to the power minus 1. That in turn can be written as so this can be written as minus 1 by alpha plus 2. And in the question says that the value of this part is nothing but alpha minus 4 by 3. So let us equate it to alpha minus 4 by 3. See, after this is a simple question of quadratic now, because we can cross multiply it. So minus 1 plus 2 alpha would be equal to alpha square minus 4 by 3 alpha. And then you can also cross multiply by 3. So this becomes 3 alpha square. And in fact, you can simplify and then do it. So alpha square, and this will become minus 2 minus 4 by 3 alpha plus 1 is equal to 0. So become 3 into 2, 6 to minus 10 by 3. If you solve this, it is not very difficult. You will get two values of alpha, 3 and 1 by 3. This is a simple quadratic. Now in the question, they have specifically said that what is the integral value of alpha. Okay, so they are not asking any value, but integral value. So if you solve this, the value of alpha comes out to be. That is the answer to this question. Now let us look into this next question. It is more about function and less about LHL RHL. But in this question, you can clearly see that even after reading the question, they are talking about LHL. This is interesting. Now, before I go on to that, you can see that I will have to figure out the value of A. So, first step is to figure out the value of A. For that, they have given a very known thing. Now, origin of these kind of questions are directly in NCERT. But let me tell you how to solve this question. So, we will have to consider two cases. In case 1, I will have to consider the value of A as even. If I consider the value as even, then f of A, since A is even, we'll have to consider the first part of the function, will become A minus 1. Now you can see that since it is A minus 1, this becomes an odd quantity. So again, if I go and figure out f of A into A minus 1, since it is odd, corresponding to that, the answer would be 2x. So becomes 2 times A minus 1. And as a result, it becomes even. Since it is even, we will repeat the cycle and figure out f of A. Since it is that, it becomes 2 times A minus 1 minus 1. Now the question says that the value of this part would be equal to 21. So as a result, 2 times 2A minus 1 becomes 22. Here there is A minus 1, sorry. So value of A minus 1 comes out to be equal to 11, A becomes 12. Now we can see that what is happening. If I take even, then this becomes odd, then this becomes even, this becomes odd. This is totally fine. But if I do it, because I can take my case 2, where I can take A as odd, so what will happen is, in the next step, this will become even. In the next step, again, it will become odd. And then again, it will become even. Since the answer is given as odd, this will not get satisfied. You can try, but I have already shown you using a logic. So I do not need to consider the next case. I am satisfied with this value. Now, once you have done this, in the next part, what we will do is figure out the value of LHL. So it becomes limit h tends to 0, f of 12 minus h. Now, if I do this, this becomes limit h tends to 0. This will become 12 minus h mod of this whole cube divided by 12 minus greatest interior function of 12 minus h by 12. The important thing to consider here is if you are looking into value of 12 minus h, you can see that this value will lie between 11 and 12. If I divide by 12, this will lie between 11 by 12 and 1. So basically between 0 and 1. So if I figure out the greatest interior function of 12 minus h by 12, it should be equal to 0. Because it is a quantity between 0 and 1. Once you have done this, it even becomes more simpler because now this limit becomes a limit h tends to 0. 12 minus h. Now this modulus will again open with a positive sign because this is a positive quantity divided by 12. You put h equal to 0, it becomes 12 cube. We have solved the limit. So answer becomes 12 square or 144. Let us check the answer. You can see D option matches. If I look into this 2019 question, it is asking us to figure out the value of right hand limit. That is very clear in this question. So if I figure out the right hand limit, it will become limit h tends to 0, f of 1 plus h. If I put this value, this becomes limit h tends to 0, 1 minus, this will become mod of 1 plus h. Then what we have is sine of 1 minus 1 plus h. So that will become 1 minus 1h, 1 minus h. Then there is a mod over it. Then there is a bracket. See, these brackets are very important. If you get one wrong, your answer will not match. This becomes gf of 1 minus 1 minus h. And in the denominator, you can see that you have 1 minus 1 minus h. There is a mod over it. Then for the other part, 1 minus 1 minus h. If I write it down, it is not a very difficult question to solve. You can get it in minutes now. If I simplify, the first part becomes 1 minus 1 minus h. This also becomes sine of mod of minus h. Inside the bracket, this 1 gets cancelled out. This will become 1 minus minus h. Greatest interior function of minus h would be equal to minus 1. And in denominator also, this becomes h, because modulus of minus h is h. This part becomes greatest interior function of minus h. See, greatest interior function of minus h I have used twice is equal to minus 1. If I substitute these values, let us see what do we get. So you have minus h here and you have sine of h here. And then what we are getting is sine of pi by 2, that is minus 1. And you can again see this will also become minus h. So this minus sign gets cancelled out. And now we will be able to distribute this. So we learned about the properties of distribution. This will become minus h by h plus sine h by h. Now here, in order to solve this question, this is fine. But for finding sine h by h, you should know this result. And this ultimately we are going to look into it. Is when x tends to 0, sine x by x will be equal to 1. So we can use this result directly. The first part becomes minus 1, second becomes plus 1, answer becomes. Now again, you can pause the video and try and solve this question. Not a very difficult question. Now they have asked us to find out the value of LHL. So again, limit h tends to 0, f of 0 minus h will come. And if I interpret this, let us see what do we get. So this becomes limit h tends to 0. This will become minus h, greatest interior function of minus h, mod of minus h, and then sine of greatest interior function of minus h. This becomes mod of minus h. Now two things, mod of minus h will become h only, and greatest interior function of minus h, we have doing it for some time, becomes minus 1. Let us use these two ideas. If I do, then this becomes minus h minus 1 plus h sine of minus 1 by h. This gets cancelled out. And now let us substitute the value. If I substitute the value, becomes minus 1 into minus 1 into sine of minus 1. So answer comes out to be minus sine. That is nothing but option C. If I look into this last question of today's discussion, this talks about a composite function. We have also looked into one of such questions earlier, but this is little bit more complex and easier at the same time. Why it is easy? Because if you look into this only as a question, then it looks, because I will have to find LHL RHL, it looks quite lengthy. But if you consider the option, there is no, does not exist in the option. So LHL RHL both I don't need to form. Even if one of them I find, my answer will come. So logical choice would be to find RHL to avoid all the minus signs. So I can write it as limit h. Usually we used to write h, but there is an h given in the question. So in order to avoid confusion, you can do two things. Simplify this question and then use h, or use some other variable to avoid the confusion. So I am replacing this h here. This will become 2 times GIF of x minus 1 minus f of x minus 1. So I am removing that confusion by doing this here, so that there is no confusion. So h tends to 0, this will become g of 2 times GIF of 1 plus h minus 1, and then f of 1 plus h minus 1, and then bracket closed. If I simplify this, this becomes limit h tends to 0, g of 2 times fractional part of h, greatest interior function of h minus f of h. Now you can see that f of h, we can get it from this function. This part will become 0. So it becomes a simpler question as a result of my clever usage of h. This part becomes 0, and f of h, we can write it from here as h by h. And if you do it like this, this becomes limit h tends to 0. Since we are looking, this will become h by h, and as a result, this becomes, this h will get cancelled out, g of minus 1. Now g of minus 1 from this part you can figure out would be equal to 1. If I do that, the answer of this question comes out to be 1. That is option. In the second part of the video, we started with all the different kinds of application of LHL RHL that can be asked in JEE Mains exam. You can see that very complicated ideas based on LHL RHL were asked, and I told you a very smart technique how to deal with modulus and greatest integer function based questions. Next one, we are going to talk about 7 important techniques to deal with indeterminacy, starting with factorization. If you have watched it till now and found it very useful, then do not miss the coming part of the series. This will largely help you develop a very good grip over limits. So see you until next one.